Hey everybody, Dominica here, back for round 2. This is twin flame video number 2. So if you did not get to see my first video, the first twin flame part 1, description of what the twin flame is, go back and watch that video and then watch this one. Okay, so where did we leave off? So we left off talking about the astrology and your personality makeup and how astrology and the planetary alignments go into making our personality. And how we, start to alchemize our soul, purify our soul through this this experience here on Earth. That being which the twin flame relationship is part of that journey, because I believe as you get higher in the spiritual levels, then things get more complex, and so it's harder to find a mate that you're actually satisfied with, or can be, the higher the level of spiritual experience is. Because I've thought about this a lot. I think that the twin flame only shows up towards the middle to higher octaves of spiritual consciousness. I think in the beginning, your mate is a lot more interchangeable, and it is less of an important thing when you're in the lower levels of spirituality, because you don't put as much value in spiritual attainment or spiritual relation to that of your significant other. I mean, maybe some do. I guess some do that are in particular religions. They put their religion. I guess different people judge that differently. But I think that once you make religion or philosophy or study of spirituality more of a big deal, then that's when the twin flame will enter into your life, because that twin flame is here to expand your soul, expand and raise your consciousness on this planet, so that you can reach the highest point of consciousness in this lifetime that we can. So, as I was saying, me and my twin flame were born on the same birthday, and we both are very psychically in tune. We both have a lot of traits geared towards the spiritual realm. When I met her, I was a little bit farther along in my journey, and had been in my spiritual zone for quite some time, before she was, even though that's not to say that when I entered into this relationship that I did not treat her as my equal or think of her as my equal, because that's very important for when you do meet your twin flame. It is to approach this relationship as an equal. You don't want to get into this dogma of who's ahead more in the in the spiritual journey, who's better, or any of that kind of stuff. So that's not a good footing or foundation to create the best kind of love, or experience the best kind of love, or experience the best kind of relationship is. So I very much entered into this as an equal, even though technically I was a little bit more advanced along in my journey than she was. She caught up very quickly with my help. I gave her a 7 to 10 day crash course on her personality and who, according to astrology, the type of person that she was or is. And we were very similar beings that were exactly 12 years to the day apart. So not only were we the same sign, but we were also the same Western astrology sign, zodiac sign. We were also the same Chinese zodiac sign. So we were both the snake in Chinese zodiac, which there's 12 signs in the Chinese zodiac. It's only once every year that the sign changes. So I mix Chinese astrology and Western astrology, and in my experience, they've went together quite nicely, and gives just that much more of a facet of that much more of a description to work with of your personality. That adds, more depth to that, so that you can be clear on who it is that you are, and try to alchemize and purify that soul, and raise your vibrations and raise your consciousness at the same time. So that, as I was saying before, I wasn't given very much religious structure or religious I was given a lot of religious freedom, to believe what I wanted to believe. I was benefited with that, even though when I was younger I wouldn't have considered it a benefit. I would have considered it more of a curse. But as time has progressed, I've realized just how much of an advantage that was for me as a person, and exactly what I needed. Um, so she was given a lot more of a spiritual directive of what she should believe. And so when I came into her life, I basically threw a blowtorch on her whole reality of what she thought life was and who she thought she was. Which it's 3 months later, it's like almost like night and day. She's very spiritually defined at this point of who she is. And when I met her, it wasn't like that. So, I mean, she had was definitely along a spiritual path, but she hadn't come into full realization yet of what her spiritual path and spiritual purpose was. Whereas I was very much farther along that path than she was at this point. So when we first met, which was about like 5 days after we met, maybe, we met in person. And right from the very beginning, when we exchanged information, because we met off of the dating site, which was like the chances of meeting someone who's the same sign, born the same day, born 12 years apart, and the same Chinese zodiac, like the statistical probability of that is like 1 in hundreds of thousands, maybe a million. It's astronomical. So the odds that would happen. So it was very much meant to be in our cards, for this relationship to happen. Like, we experienced so many hundreds or dozens upon dozens of major synchronicities every day. Like, and some days there was like a dozen or more synchronicities that the universe was throwing at us. Just, again, like, showing us the way that this is real, and this is happening. So pay attention and take notes, because you're in for an experience. So we met, and I had already I have a Facebook page where I do spiritual coaching and some spiritual guidance and some techniques that I use through soul alchemy and through shadow work and the study of our ego and what role it plays in our lives. And so I laid it all out for her, what I believed and the type of person that I was, and the type of person who I thought she might be also. And I was able to very rapidly put together hundreds of loose puzzle pieces that she had together all at once, very rapidly, within like a week, 7 to 10 days, through her being able to study the free content that I had on Facebook, and as well as the ability to just, talk. And we were, basically, she was not at full spiritual capacity, when we met, but she had had some major experiences and was leading in that direction. So when I gave her a lot of validation that she needed to in her life, and that was like the first part of this spiritual journey. And she gave me a lot of validation and a lot of praise, compliments, and respect, recognition, and understanding that I hadn't gotten before out of other relationships. So it was very fulfilling that way, and we understood each other very much. So, like, because we're born on the same birthday, we understood each other a lot. And so when I came in, I put the spiritual blowtorch on her, connected all these puzzle pieces, and she evolved and expanded her consciousness very rapidly. Like, within a week to 10 days, she was completely changed from who she was 10 days before that. And she was like having spiritual visions and downloads like constantly. So much so that she, after going to meet a psychic who she consulted with about our relationship, the psychic was very telling in our relationship that this was real and that this was meant to be, and that this was the real deal, and that this was going to show her a side of love that she was not used to or not privy to, and that this was the real deal. There were several things that we won't get into here today, that were personal verifiers and validations that told me that the psychic was real, basically, because there was things that she knew that she couldn't have possibly known. So that was pretty amazing. Like, we met on the 9th of December. She met the psychic on the 21st of December, and went to the psychic for the second time, by the way. Her first one, she recorded both sessions, and her first session was like back in May, and it was very powerful too. Like, it was a serious deal. So she was going along on this journey of transformation, basically since May of last year, all the way up through December with me, where she was just like ripe and ready for this bump up in consciousness that the universe was preparing for her. So we met, and I told her a lot about, this or that about herself, and she learned a lot, and very quickly caught up to my speed, caught up to my level in a very quick manner, through my help of, putting these street signs, so to speak, and these pictures together to collate as a spiritual message, and she thought that after she saw the psychic, she thought that she was very powerful, and thought that she needed to save her family from trauma and from this or that, and she felt like she had the answer, and she wanted to share her newfound message, her newfound stuff that she had discovered. And ultimately, that led to her thinking that this spiritual guru guy who she met, to me, was like messing up her head. And one of her family members, her friends, ended up calling the police on her and saying that she needed mental help, which, you know, she had been going through with her husband, her ex-husband anyways, that she had just recently gotten a divorce from, who basically told her she was crazy and that none of this was real, and never supported her in any way, because he was an atheist. And so they thought that she was just going through another episode, a mental episode breakdown that she had had 2 times previously. And so some members of her family and friends were able to talk the police into taking her to the hospital, and then having a mental evaluation done there, which, you know, I can kind of see where they were coming from, but they like thought that instantly that like I was doing some like witchcraft magic on her that wasn't on the up and up, and thought that a bunch of funky things were happening and wasn't quite sure how to handle it, because she was, you know, acting very, very different, and was preaching a lot of spiritual stuff that they didn't quite understand. So that for her, you know, safety, they had a psychological assessment done on her, which landed her, and it ultimately ended, she landed in a mental ward for like a week, around Christmas time. We met on the 9th. By the 22nd, she was in the psych ward, and she was in there for like a week, but it was very quickly learned by the staff, who are now aware of the spiritual awakening. Their psychology and spirituality are finally starting to catch up again with each other, and they're starting to merge, and they're starting to realize the importance spirituality has to play, in its role it plays in a lot of people's lives. So they're aware of it now, and they at least acknowledge it. There's something called transpersonal psychology. It's something that I follow along, and I kind of do a form of transpersonal psychology through, you know, ego and shadow work that we do, that was been around for probably centuries, through, you know, Eastern philosophies, Eastern spiritual teachings. Carl Jung brought it into the modern medical realm, and, you know, brought that, the study of the ego and spirituality and its role it plays in our lives, to light. So, which is, you know, very much Jungian theory that I've studied and I teach. And so, so she was in there for like a week. She did fine. She talked to her psych therapist, and they realized that this was a spiritual awakening, and they let her out. Almost everybody had abandoned her at this point, and like a lot of her friends had turned on her. She'd lost a lot of friends who thought that she went crazy and off the deep end, and there was a lot of rumors started that weren't true about me and about her, and that we were like practicing like black magic and all this stuff, which wasn't true at all. And it took a lot of coaching, like coaching her parents and stuff, and it took a couple weeks for this to repair itself. She ultimately stopped having contact with her sister completely. Her sister had like messaged me and threatened me that to stay away from her and stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty crazy there for a while. But so after our 4 to 6 week in the honeymoon stage, things started to get harder. Like, we moved very quickly in our relationship, very fast, as Pisces often do. And I ended up like staying with her for like a week, and then the cracks in the foundation started to show themselves. Like her more negative aspects of herself, which we won't get into because I'm not trying to make this a battle of between who was right and who was wrong. We both ultimately walked away from this experience with positive growth, positive spiritual growth, even though it was very, very hard, very difficult for me to go through. It was like very depressed for a minute there after I realized like some things weren't going quite the way I wanted them to, and I realized that I was making a lot of projections of my own insecurities onto her, and I didn't realize that until like more study. I had done more study within my own spirituality and stuff. Like, I came to realize through other teachers that I might not be as perfect as I thought that I was. And so I had to be very honest with myself, and it took a lot of spiritual honesty and honesty with myself and training to realize that I was doing a lot of this negative projecting stuff that she was showing me that was through some fault of her own, that she was being not the nicest person towards me, but ultimately I was projecting a lot of my own stuff onto her, and it was reflecting back to me as her doing it, when it was actually really not her at all. It was myself doing this to myself. And so was the greatest lesson I learned. Okay, well, we're wrapping up on part 2. Part 3 is going to be very simplified. So we'll say goodbye for now. I'm going to probably do another short 10-minute video after this. And so come back for that one. Come back for part 3, and we'll wrap this up. All right, thanks guys. Dominicus out. See you next time.